Hello everyone, welcome back to series of lecture where we are going to learn how knowledge of chemistry is important in pharmaceutical and chemical industry. In this video, Mr. Rupesh Sendane is a formulation scientist having around 10 years of research experience. He is working in Abbott Healthcare Private Limited, Mumbai, India. He has described how chemistry knowledge is important in design of pharmaceutical formulations. He has described how simple properties like melting point, solubility play key role while designing formulation. Acidic and basic nature of drugs sometimes may be incompatible, and what approaches one has to adopt while designing and executing or developing certain formulation is described by Rupesh in this video in very nice manner. So the one who is having good knowledge of chemistry can be a good formulator in the future. Thank you.
Hi all, I'm Rupesh Sandane, a formulation research scientist with 9+ years of experience in design and development of different dosage forms and processes for them. I've completed my masters in pharmaceutics and currently associated with Abbott Healthcare Private Limited, Mumbai. Prior to Abbott, I have worked with Denmark Pharmaceuticals and Indochemical Limited. I have also completed my Six Sigma certification as a green belt, and I am a pharmaceutical GMP professional. Today I am going to explain you the role of chemistry into the dosage form and process design. Now one might say, dosage form and process design are related to the pharmaceutics and how chemistry plays the role on it. You are partially right. Though pharmaceutics is integral part of pharmaceutical dosage form and process design, chemistry has a huge role to play in it. Let me explain. We all know physicochemical properties of a drug substance always impact its formulation as well as the process used for the development of the dosage forms. Now, physicochemical properties such as pH, pKa, solubility, melting point, all are dependent on chemical nature of the drug substance. And these are highly important while designing a new dosage form or new process for particular drug substance. For this, we'll take example of ibuprofen. Ibuprofen has a low melting point of 75 to 77 degrees Celsius. Now with this melting point, you cannot employ the process which has high temperature for any unit operation. Parabens are soluble in water at a temperature of 80 or above. Now if a formulator is unknown of this fact, he will not be able to get a clear solution of parabens, and he will not get the preservative effect if the temperature is not appropriate while dissolving. Talking of ibuprofen again, whenever designing a compression process, melting point of the ibuprofen needs to be considered. Or for any drug which has low melting point, these points needs to be considered. Because during the compression, high pressure is applied while compacting the powder. And due to this high pressure, melting point gets lower and drug substance tends to melt. Now this melting causes problem of sticking to the die walls and punches, resulting in poor tablet ejection. Now if a formulator knows that this is a low melting point drug, he can use various remedies to overcome the sticking problem, simply by lowering the compression pressure, using pre-compression, or using cold water circulation to compression machine so that the temperature remains to minimum, or by adding the excipients which can either increase the melting point of the drug substance or prevent sticking by giving the lubrication effect. This is the way chemistry helps in designing the process. Well, absorption of any drug molecule is dependent on the solubility as well as permeability of that molecule. For any drug substance to get absorbed, it first needs to go into the solution, into the GI fluids. And that's why the solubility is very important parameter. We all know many of the drugs are weakly acidic or weakly basic in nature. And this acid-base chemistry plays a role in designing the dosage form. For example, a drug substance which is a weakly acid and is intended to be taken as an immediate release tablet will not dissolve in highly acidic pH of the gastric environment. Knowing this fact, formulator will need to increase the solubility, or he needs to add excipients which can enhance the solubility or the rate of dissolution of the drug product and improve the efficacy of that tablet. Solubility is the highly studied field in the pharmaceutical industry. Various approaches employed for increasing solubility of the drug products all are dependent on the chemistry of the drug molecule or the solubility enhancer whichever are used. For example, formation of drug salts, products, all are dependent on the chemical nature of the drug substance. Another method used is co-crystallization. For forming co-crystals, you need to understand what kind of interaction that drug molecule will have with the carrier or a co-drug, whichever is used as for to increase the solubility by forming co-crystal. Similarly, solid dispersions, inclusion complex, these all are dependent on the type of bondage that a molecule can form with the polymers or the carrier molecule used in the inclusion complex. Now, this is the way chemistry helps a formulator to design a formulate in a way that it will have high efficacy as well as safety. Another aspect where chemistry plays a role is the stability of the drug product. We all know stability is defined as a drug substance will remain in with predefined specifications throughout its shelf life. If it goes out of specification, that product is called unstable. This instability of the drug substance is caused by, of course, its chemical degradation. It may cause to the loss of potency or it may lead to a harmful impurity generation. Now, to understand what will be the impact of the various environmental conditions on the formulation or the drug product, a scientist, a formulator needs to understand the degradation pathway of the drug molecule. And for this, he takes help of chemistry. Generally, a formulator applies various stress conditions to the drug substance so as to know how and to what extent that can get degraded. There may be use of hydrolysis through acids, through base, oxidation, hygroscopicity studies, photostability studies. These all are stressed on the drug molecule and its degradation products as well as degradation pathways are determined. And from that knowledge, the attempts are made that a stable formulation can be created. For example, if a drug is prone to acid hydrolysis, formulator will avoid using acidic excipients and or excipients which have high moisture. And so he may avoid what? Aqueous granulation or aqueous processes and use non-aqueous processes to avoid contact of moisture. He will also use the packaging which will prevent moisture from entering to the dosage form. This is the way force degradation or stress degradation helps to understand the stability of the formulation. There is another example. We all know of very blockbuster molecules which have been used as a proton pump inhibitor, or simply saying as an antacids are prone to acid degradation. Though they act against acid and they inhibit the proton pump, they have instability in the gastric acid. If formulators have not known this fact that these are prone to acid degradation, so we might have lost a big class of helpful drugs called proton pump inhibitors. These drugs are simply delivered to intestine by covering them with the acid-insoluble polymers, which we call as enteric coating, and this way the acid degradation is prevented. There are various examples we can give where chemistry helps a formulator to deliver a better, safe and efficacious drug product with the good stability. I will cite one example where the chemistry has played an excellent role to deliver a very good drug product. There are two drugs, aspirin and dipyridamole. In clinical studies, it was found that aspirin and dipyridamole in combination works effectively to avoid the risk of platelet aggregation and heart strokes. Now the problem is, aspirin is an acidic drug and dipyridamole is a basic drug. Now when they both are given together in a formulation, they form a complex which is due to the acid-base reaction in between them, and that that causes degradation of the dipyridamole and decrease the efficacy. Similarly, solubility of dipyridamole is pH dependent and it is soluble in acidic pH only since it has basic properties. Now this is interesting scenario. Dipyridamole is not chemically stable in acid, but it will get into solution only in acidic conditions. Now what the formulation scientists have done with these drugs? They used a tablet, a simple immediate release tablet of aspirin, and they coated it so that the immediate contact of the drug aspirin and dipyridamole is prevented. Secondly, they formed a pellet where they coat the dipyridamole with enteric coated polymers and they delivered dipyridamole to the intestine. This way they overcome the problem of stability. But in the basic pH of the intestine, dipyridamole was not solubilized, and that's why it was not absorbed, and that's why there was no impact of the dipyridamole observed on the patients. Now, what scientists did? They utilized the fact that dipyridamole has high solubility into acidic environment. So they used tartaric acid pellets with dipyridamole. Now tartaric acid again is an acid which reacts with dipyridamole and forms a complex and degrades it. So to avoid interaction between them, formulation scientists took tartaric acid, coated it with some polymer layer, then they coated this layer with the drug, and then the enteric coat was given. So they forms multiple particulate system of the dipyridamole coated over tartaric acid. This way they delivered the drug to intestine, and in intestine, due to presence of tartaric acid, the microenvironmental pH got lowered to acidic side, and the drug got solubilized, and subsequently it was absorbed into the bloodstream. And aspirin and dipyridamole both exerted the synergistic effect. This is how chemistry helped to give a very good and efficacious composition to help a very serious disease of heart stroke. Apart from that, due to these innovations, the innovator of that drug product was able to get a patent and serve with a monopoly for a time of 20 years. This is how chemistry helps formulation and process design. There are many other examples such as polymer chemistry, isomerizations, racemic mixtures, or particular isomer of the product, or polymorphism. We can say there are many examples of chemistry helping the betterment of the formulation and processes. This is all from my side. Thank you.